So Spike Lee's Highest to Lowest is a remake of the Akira Kurosawa film High and Low. Now, I was a little bit hesitant about this film because I know that some people have problems when Spike Lee adapts stuff like Old Boy, which, wasn't that great of a remake. But I had a little bit more confidence in something like this because for those who haven't seen High and Low, it's honestly like right next to Ikaru. I think it's one of Kurosawa's best non-samurai films. What it is it's essentially a crime thriller about, someone trying to negotiate for someone's son with money and then, making the drop for the money and then eventually catching the culprit and realizing how greed and money motivated this whole kidnapping scenario. Highest to Lowest follows some of like the same format, but it's a much different film in terms of tone, in terms of theme, and just the way that it's very much like a Spike Lee film instead of just being like an American adaptation of High and Low. And part of what makes it more distinct, I think, first off, is that you have Denzel Washington playing the lead here, of David King, who is a music mogul who specializes in trying to find top talent, but he's trying right now to do his best to reattain the ownership of his company so that AI doesn't take over. But it's not going as well. He's trying to like scrape together as much money as he can, and it seems like things are just starting to work out for him. And what I love so much about Washington's performance is that he has this confidence that just naturally exudes from him. Like at one point he's trying to negotiate to let someone allow him to buy up the remaining shares he needs for majority control. And he has such a way with trying to convince people that at one point he just lets a bunch of pregnant pauses linger in the air. And he's just like, come on, you know you want to give it to me. You know you do. And he just lets it linger in the air there. And you just feel like he's kind of won in that moment. And you're just like watching him just kind of like dance around how much he can negotiate so well. But of course, then his negotiations are put to the ultimate test when his son Trey is kidnapped by an aspiring rapper called Young Felon, played by A$AP Rocky. And this is where David starts revealing just how much like money plays a key role in his world, because initially he does manage to get the money that he needs for, buying up his company. But then the rapper who has kidnapped his son says, you got to give me that money. And at first he thinks, okay, well, it's my son. I guess I got to give up the money. But then he gets his son back, and then he has to end up negotiating instead for the son of his friend played by Jeffrey Wright in the film. And then it becomes a bigger question of, do I really want to give up this money? And the fact that David even has to think about it is immediately of offense to Jeffrey Wright's character of Paul. And they have like a pretty good dynamic that when you see like this money drive them apart, it becomes, a key aspect of like defining David's character about, giving him a chance to decide what matters most in life, his family and friends, or money and ownership of his own music company. And it's a battle that you feel that his character can win this battle if he determines what is most important in life and comes to the realization. There are a few moments where he is much more colder about this whole ordeal. Like there's one exchange he has with Trey that is just, it's deeply chilling the way that just David kind of like asserts himself and it says, look, I'm the man of the house and I get to decide what happens with the money. This isn't up to you. It's up to me. And Trey's just like, this is a really selfish side of you. And it's not quite as, I guess I should stress this, it's not as vicious as like Denzel's performance in something like Fences, where he was very like gritty and very just mean and all that. This type of character is a little less mean. He's still a bit cruel and cold-hearted, but he's also a very slick negotiator. And I think what helps with this film establish its certain tone is the way that Spike Lee infuses music into this film in a way that's kind of like juxtaposed, because there's hip hop, there's jazz, there's Latin American music, and it's all placed on top of scenes of like of chases and gunfighting and bitter disputes that it kind of creates this little bit of like an offbeat tone that kind of reminded me of like a 1990s thriller. Like it wouldn't surprise me if this had been an idea that Spike Lee wanted to do in the 90s. Just the performances are so great here because Denzel Washington, the moment that he's trying to negotiate for his kid with young Felon, played by A$AP Rocky, Denzel has such a natural presence in this film. The way he's able to like crack jokes in between talking to young Felon is just so great. Just because like, you know, A$AP Rocky is putting on a very intimidating performance here about just like calling out David, saying like, look, I'm calling the shots. I'm tired of you always being in control. I don't like that you're in control. I want to take this situation. I'm going to take this hostage. You're going to do what I want. You're going to give me what I want. If I want more, you're going to give it to me. That's how it's going to work. And David's character, David King, is very much like, yeah, okay, maybe I'll play this game with you, but I'm gonna make it on my own terms. I'm gonna do it because I want to, not because you're making me. Now, there are a few familiar scenes that are reflected from Kurosawa's High and Low. There is, for instance, the handoff with the train, although it proceeds much differently and with a far different tone, especially. When I said like the film juxtaposed music, it's because the big sequence where he drops the money from the train is on a subway that's passing right through this Puerto Rican festival. And at this Puerto Rican festival, there's this eccentric party music going the whole time while David's just looking around for where to drop the money, and the cops are keeping an eye on it and trying to figure out where the money's going, trying to track down the culprit. And all the while, there's this very eccentric, you know, music going on in the background, and it's actually the music is played by Eddie Palmieri, who is a pretty accomplished pianist, and I think there's a great shot in the film that perfectly defines Spike Lee's style, because there's a moment where Eddie is playing the piano, and he's just having such a ball with it that at one point he just starts playing with his elbows. And it doesn't seem to like throw anyone off key. It doesn't seem to bother the audience. Just it's kind of wild, and it seems to kind of work. And that's very much how Spike Lee's film is here. It takes a few wild swings with how it sets up a lot of these scenes. And while I don't feel like most of them work, especially the scenes that kind of try to have like a little bit like of an offbeat nature, especially for like the opening sequence, man. You would not believe me if I told you what piece of music they use in the opening scenes of this film that are mostly just external shots of New York City. You would not believe me. But I do appreciate the way that Spike Lee is just, the way that he has like a lot of like pillow shots that, you know, like Ozu would perfect, that he showcases the environment. He tries to make New York City feel alive, and it very much does. Like there's a lot of talk about basketball teams and, you know, going by Yankee Stadium and whipping up fans, and just the music in the streets and the way that all these New Yorkers interact with each other. It's a film that's very much alive. Like High and Low was very much an intense film for how it's zeroed in on like the drama and the intensity of whether or not, you know, they were going to be able to rescue this kid. Highest to Lowest feels like a film that's just kind of like basking in the New York atmosphere and just trying to use all the colors on the palette to paint this very vivid portrait of a thriller. Now, the one scene that I'm sure a lot of people are going to be questioning with this film is the moment where eventually young Felon is locked up and David has to confront the culprit. This scene happened in High and Low, and it's one of the best scenes in the film. It's the very last scene, and it's the scene of the culprit basically realizing what he's done, how he's kind of like doomed his life, and just slowly coming to this bitter realization that his world is coming to an end. And just realizing, I don't want this, I didn't want this to happen, and then just breaking down mentally as kind of like the literal cage closes in around him. And that type of scene is in Highest to Lowest, but it's approached much differently. Like, for starters, right before the scene happens, there's a little bit of a music video sequence in which both like Denzel Washington and ASAP Rocky are facing each other and kind of meeting each other on like the same ground of how they view their life specifically as like music and business. And their meeting, when they both meet face to face with like the glass separating them, it's less about like the criminal and more about David realizing that he's kind of got to turn away from the world of greed. So it's kind of like his rejection of the devil rather than watching like a criminal disintegrate. It's basically recognizing that not all money is good money. In fact, that kind of becomes his motto as the film goes along, that you don't have to accept every business deal that comes your way, and that not all attention is good attention. Sometimes you have to take control of your life and realize what matters most. So it's the same setup for the type of scene, but a much different tone and a much different theme that Spike Lee injects into it. And I think that's what I love so much about Highest to Lowest, is that it doesn't feel like a direct adaptation of High and Low, which is great. If you have a remake, especially of like a Kurosawa film, when you look at his other films like Seven Samurai and Yojimbo, you want to put your own mark on that. A lot of people don't see The Magnificent Seven as an adaptation so much of The Seven Samurai. It feels like a different type of Western in its own right. Same goes with, adapting Yojimbo into A Fistful of Dollars. You need to bring something more than just doing like a straight adaptation. Because like a remake that's just like shot for shot and verbatim the same lines, it's not fun, it's not interesting, and it doesn't really say anything about the director other than their ability to replicate. And I have no doubt that Spike could pull off like a Gus Van Sant type situation and make like the same version of like Psycho, just repeat the same thing as High and Low. But I don't want that out of a film. I want to see some experimenting. And that's what's so impressive about what he does here. I don't think it always works. I think there are a few scenes where it does feel a bit off, and I do think some of the exchanges drag a little bit. And I do think probably the biggest problem with this film is that some of the thematic elements kind of get lost as the film goes along, and kind of gets lost in its theatrics, especially when you get to see Denzel fight back and chase down a young felon through like the streets of New York City. It feels like a much different film from High and Low. And not all those scenes work, but for the most part, I'm kind of impressed by the type of film that Spike Lee was able to wield with this material, and not just give us the same thing over and over. So as an adaptation, I don't think this is Spike Lee's best film, but for attempting to adapt a Akira Kurosawa film, I think he does a pretty good job putting his own mark on this and making it feel like a much different film, and a very vibrant film, and a very alive film, with a fantastic performance from Denzel Washington, which, Denzel's always pretty good, but I haven't seen a film where he takes full control and just dominates a film. Like, even when he was in Macbeth, I felt like he was the central role there, and I still didn't feel like we were getting all of Denzel in that role. Here, I do feel like Lee is bringing out a lot more of that natural charisma and that ability to control a room and seem intimidating all at once. So yeah, once again, Spike Lee knows how to direct someone like Denzel Washington, and knows how to take familiar material and put his own mark on it. So yeah, for the most part, Highest to Lowest is a pretty damn good Spike Lee film for being adapted from a Kurosawa classic.